Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Starter Garage. Today I'm in the E30 just looking up part numbers, doing some research before I buy some more parts, and I thought I'd bring you along for the ride. So stay tuned, we're going to go through it, we're going to be taking out the ECU and trying to fix what I think is a stuck lifter or several stuck lifters in the engine. Stay tuned. So today's episode is more of an unplanned episode. I was doing some research online, talking to some friends about potential parts for the car, and I realized I need to come and verify some part numbers in my car before I make my next purchase. So what I'm going to be doing today is actually pulling the ECU out of the car so I can double check the part number. You can kind of guess what I may be shopping for, given that I'm looking up ECU part numbers. And then the second thing I want to do today is address the engine. In the last video, this engine start video, it didn't sound very good. If you haven't seen that video yet, click here. There should be a link above to go back and view that video. Now, I've spent some time talking to people on the Rev Limited pages and the Ontario E30 pages about what that could be, and the consensus seems to be that the noise may be coming from stuck hydraulic lifters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the BMW recommended procedure to fix that noise, which basically means I just turn the engine on and let it idle at 3,000 RPM for a couple of minutes, and that should pump oil back into the hydraulic lifters and eliminate, or at least mitigate, that noise. So stay tuned. I'm going to start pulling the ECU right now, and we can go from there. So the first step in removing your ECU is actually identifying where it is in the vehicle. In E30s, like the one that I'm working on right now, and various other BMW chassis, the ECU is located under a plastic cover inside the glove box. So we're going to go ahead and remove that right now so that we can expose the ECU and read the part numbers. Now, one important thing to note if you're new to this, you want to unplug your battery before you touch the ECU. Not a problem for me right now because there's no battery in the car, so I don't really have to worry about that. The other thing to note is don't get confused by the control unit that's under the driver's side of the dash. I actually did that this morning. I was kind of embarrassed. It's been a while since I've worked on this car. The module that's under the driver's side of the dash is the ABS control module. So you really want to make sure that you're pulling the part numbers off the right modules before you make any purchases. Don't freak out like I did and think, oh my gosh, I've got the wrong ECU, I can't buy these parts. Again, driver's side under the dash is the ABS module. Passenger side in the glove box is the ECU or the DME. One quick thing before we get started, I'm going to be using the words ECU or DME a lot in this video. For those that don't know what that means, the ECU is the engine control unit. It's essentially the computer that controls everything in your car. Well, not everything. It controls most of the electronics related to your engine. It does the calculations for air-fuel mixture and a bunch of other key functions. A DME is basically just a different acronym for the same part. So ECU, engine control unit, DME is digital motor electronics. Just very German. Anyways, that's the definition of both of those acronyms that we will be using throughout this video. So I hope that helps you guys understand. In order to remove the ECU, you first have to open the glove box. The ECU is actually hidden underneath this plastic panel, as I mentioned before. This panel is held in by two Phillips head screws, one on either side of the panel. What we're going to do right now is take these screws out, and then the panel will drop down, exposing the ECU. So let's do that. Okay, so the screws are out. Now I can just pull down on the panel. There we go. You see the two J nuts or U nuts here that are clamped onto the piece of plastic. That's what the screws go into that allow this to stay up in place. So this right here is your ECU. This is the main connector. This is a huge connector that comes from your main body harness and goes into the ECU. The next thing I have to do, there's a number of, I believe they're 10mm bolts that are holding in, that are essentially clamping the ECU in place. So I'm going to undo those right now, and then all I have to do is drop this down. I'm not replacing my ECU, I'm not removing the ECU, so all I want to do is loosen it enough that I can drop it, read the part number, or dust off the part number so I can read it, take that down as a note, and then I can go back to ordering parts later on. Okay, so all I've done is I've loosened, there are 4 nuts. Let me put this again. Okay, so all I've done is I've loosened 4 nuts that are on this ECU carrier bracket. You can see me spinning it right now with my finger. So it's 4 10mm bolts, or sorry, 10mm nuts that I've loosened, and now that's allowed this bottom clamp of the bracket to lower just enough where I should be able to, there you go, slide the ECU out, and then dust off the part number and read the part number. Here we go. Of course, I'm not wearing my gloves again. But whatever, that's what soap's for. So there you go. There's my part number for my ECU. I've got a 261-200-175 blue label ECU in my E30. So now I can take that part number, plug it into parts websites that I'm looking at right now, and make sure that I'm selecting the right part for my car. So as I mentioned before, I am not removing my ECU. I have no plans to replace it right now. Barring any major screw up on my part, it still works. So I'm just going to put this thing back in place, tighten up the nuts to get this clamped back in properly, and I'm going to move on to the next part of this video, which is going to be trying to clean my stuck lifters. So let's put this back. Alright, so I actually just had to push the ECU a little bit further in. I hadn't fully seated it when I started bolting everything back up together, and the plastic cover wouldn't snap back into place. So now everything's back in the right position. I can bolt this up again, screw this plastic cover back in place, and we can move on to the lifters. Alright, so the ECU's back in place, and I have the part number I need to use as I'm shopping for parts going forward. So that's great. Next order of business is to put the battery back in the trunk and start this car up again and see if I can deal with those lifters. Alright, so that's what the car sounds like right now. I'd like to say that it sounds a little bit better than last time, now that I've let it warm up and get some oil through it. I'm still going to monitor it though, and I'm definitely going to post this video online on the forums and the user groups just to see, you know, if I'm crazy or maybe I'm just being paranoid or if there is still something wrong here. Having said that, it does sound a lot better. I feel a lot better myself. I'm hot as anything now, letting this thing run it inside my garage. Even with the door open, standing over the engine is hot. Anyways, this is where we're going to wrap the video. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you liked this video. If you're new to the channel, consider hitting subscribe below. I really appreciate it. Like I said, it makes me feel good on the inside. And you can always find me on Instagram at Starter Garage Online. I am most active on there. I try to post every single day, either behind the scenes stuff, pictures of the car, pictures of my other cars, or whatever comes to mind on that given day. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.